Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Irene and I am a registered dietitian. So today I wanted to talk about 5 things that I wish that I knew before starting my dietetic internship. So without further ado, let's get into it. Number 1, every internship is different. So there are a lot of different types of dietetic internship programs and each structure kind of varies. So there are actually several different ways that you can get your supervised hours, including graduate programs, didactic programs, and coordinated programs. And so each of these programs may structure their internship a little bit differently. So between these, you're gonna see probably quite a bit of difference. But then even within the same types of programs, you will also see differences between different schools and institutions. So for example, me and my friend, we both did graduate programs with the internship included, but we went to different schools. And when we were talking about our internship experiences, we actually found out that there were a lot of differences. And that's not to say that anyone was better or worse than the other, it's just that we had different experiences. Now, they both covered the same competencies that you need in order to be an Ascend accredited school, but we were just at different settings and things like that. So I thought that that was super interesting when I was talking to her about that. The other thing is I also started my graduate program during the pandemic. So I also did part of my internship remotely, and that's probably not something that a lot of people have experienced before. The pandemic is brand new, and so we were trying to work out how to meet these competencies remotely when we weren't allowed to, travel to different locations and things like that. So that was also a major difference in my internship experience compared to other people's. And then once I was actually able to go in person to a hospital for my clinical and food service rotations, I actually was the only intern there because I was at a smaller hospital. So that was also something that I feel like is very different from most people, is not having classmates or peers to kind of do the internship with. So with that being said, it is pretty important to kind of go into your internship with an open mind. You may hear from other people or classmates that have gone through their dietetic internship about how their experience was, but don't go into it feeling like it's going to be exactly the same, because chances are it's going to be very different, even if it's the same program, because you might meet different people and have different patient encounters and things like that, and that can really make your experience different. Number 2, your preceptor doesn't expect you to know everything. So you're going into an internship. The point is for you to learn. They're not going to expect you to really know everything. Of course, it's definitely nice to come in with some information already, but if you don't know like all the RDAs for vitamins and minerals, for example, or if you're not really familiar with the food and drug interactions, that's totally okay. For me personally, I had a year gap between when I took MNT and when I started my clinical rotation. So there was a lot of information that I forgot. But through my internship, I was able to pick it up pretty quickly because I was able to refer back to my notes and just gain some hands-on experience, because I don't know about you, but I'm definitely a person that needs hands-on experience in order to retain any information. So just be prepared to go into your internship like a sponge and ready to soak up any information. And your preceptor may also ask you questions along the way to kind of check your knowledge. Don't be afraid to tell them that you don't know the answer to something. For me, I always feel like telling my preceptor honestly that I don't know the answer to that. And you can also say something along the lines of, I don't know, can you give me a couple minutes to look that over? Or can you walk me through the answer? Saying something like that is always better than trying to pull an answer out of your ass, because I feel like sometimes that just makes you look like a fool. So it's okay if you don't know things. Number 3, Google will become your best friend. So this one kind of goes along with number 2. But I feel like as a dietitian, we don't necessarily learn about every single medical condition or medication that's out there, or even every supplement. It's not really in our training. So there are going to be times where you're going to have to look things up, and that's totally okay. Just make sure you're using a reputable source and you're not doing it right in front of the patient. I know when I was first starting out with my dietetic internship, there were a lot of medical abbreviations that I did not know. And so I would always have to look them up whenever I was reading a chart. But once I kind of got familiar with them, I didn't have to, of course. But then there were also just random things that I didn't know, like what diet is a person with a cholecystectomy supposed to follow? Like, first of all, I don't even know what a cholecystectomy is, which, by the way, is a procedure to remove the gallbladder. But then even once I found out what a cholecystectomy was, I was like, yeah, I still don't know what diet they're supposed to be on. So, of course, I flipped through my M&T textbook, found the answer, which is low-fat diet, but it still took me a little bit of time to kind of connect the dots. You know, a gallbladder is used to help with bile secretion, which is then used to help break down the fats that you eat. So of course they're going to be on a low-fat diet. You know, it kind of takes some time to connect the dots there, especially when you're a student just starting out. But even as a dietitian now, I still look up things like at least 2 or 3 times a day, and that can just be like medications or medical conditions that I've never heard of. And I sometimes also look things up just to fact check myself. Like, I don't want to make a fool of myself in front of a doctor or patient, so I'm just gonna look things up to be on the safe side. Number 4, patient encounters will be awkward, and that's okay. So now that you've kind of gone through their chart, you've looked up all the medical abbreviations, and you're in the room with the patient, you've introduced yourself, and you don't know what to say next. Or maybe you have some questions that you need to ask them, but they keep talking about the dog that they have at home. Or maybe they are really guarded and really not giving you a lot of answers. They're sort of answering with one word, yes or no, or maybe even you've had a great conversation with them and now they're just talking and talking and talking, and you don't know how to end the conversation and get out of the room. Chances are that you're going to experience one or more of these situations as an intern or even as a dietitian. Patient encounters are awkward, especially when you're first starting out. Interacting with patients and kind of knowing how to ask questions, what words to use to ask questions, that's definitely a learned skill, and practice makes perfect. I know when I was first starting out, I was super awkward. You know, I was always stumbling over my words, and I would have to pause a lot to kind of think about how to word things in my head or think about what to say next. And it took a while for me to build my own style of counseling and know how to talk to patients. And sometimes it also varies depending on the demographic that you're working with. You know, I work with a lot of geriatric patients, but if you work with a lot of pediatric patients or, you know, ICU patients, it may be a different skill set. So that's one thing to think about. But one thing that really helped me in kind of learning how to counsel or talk with patients and things like that was really rehearsing in my head, like, how am I going to say this? What order should I ask these questions in? If they tell me this, what should I ask them? And so kind of rehearsing and going through these things in my head like a couple of times before I got to their room, that really helped. And one tip that I would give for anyone first starting out is, you know, try and build rapport. So when I go into a room after I introduce myself, I say, hi, I'm here to see how you're doing and how you're eating. You know, and they'll usually tell me if they've been eating okay. If they gave me a short response, I might ask a follow-up question and be like, how has the food been? You know, that usually gets them to really talk. You know, they'll tell me the food has been really bad or it's been really good. And that's one good way to build rapport. If they are NPO or they're on clear liquids, I may ask them, I know it looks like that they're not really letting you eat right now, but is it okay if I ask some questions about how you were eating before you got to the hospital? And then some patients, they might not be really feeling very well if they're NPO or in that state, and they might not want to talk about food, and that's totally okay. But most patients will say yes, and then you can kind of launch into your questions. So they kind of know what your purpose is and why you're there, and that usually helps to smooth things over. Number 5, you are the nutrition expert and you may have to do a lot of advocating for your patients. So now that you have seen the patient, or talked to the nurse, you've developed your nutrition recommendations. Depending on the doctor and or the hospital, how it's run, how much they value nutrition, you may have to do a lot of advocating for your recommendation. I don't know about you, but I thought going into dietetics initially, I was extremely naive and I thought that, whatever the dietitian says would just kind of happen, but that's not always the case. And maybe it does in some hospitals. Maybe some doctors are kind of just like, yeah, whatever the dietitian says, just go ahead and do it. But I feel like in a lot of cases, nutrition is, kind of forgotten about or left on the back burner. Because, doctors have a lot that they're juggling with. They have maybe 30 patients that they have to see, and each one has, I don't know, like 10 comorbidities or something. It can be a lot, and so they don't always have nutrition on the forefront of their mind. I don't blame them. So there may be instances where you have to really badger the doctors and nurses in order to advance patients' diets or, get them started on some kind of nutrition. And it can be kind of uncomfortable to do, especially when you're first starting out. I feel like as a society, we really value like doctors' opinions a lot, and what they say kind of goes, and if they don't mention something about it, sometimes you don't know if it's your place to say something, but you are the nutrition experts and you should definitely tell them your recommendations. If you really think, like, based on research and evidence, that they would definitely fare better if they were being fed, go ahead and tell the doctor that. It can be an uncomfortable conversation and you may not know how to really begin it, but that is also part of your job. No one else is really thinking about nutrition as the first and foremost thing. And as dietitians and nutrition experts, that's what we're supposed to do. So just know that going into this, sometimes your job may not just include, writing recommendations. You may also have to really talk to the doctors and work with an interdisciplinary team in order to actually get the patient what they need nutrition-wise. So those are 5 things that I wish I knew before starting my dietetic internship. I hope that is helpful to anyone about to start theirs or looking into getting into dietetics. If you did find it helpful, please be sure to give me a like, subscribe, and comment down below what kind of video you would like to see next. Bye.